Uh, Hello, everyone. So, we're going to present about the difference of Indonesia, America, British, and cinema movie. And present by myself, Firza Andrian, and one of my teammates, Muhammad Faisal Anwar. Cinema movie. Cinema is a theater where movies are shown for public entertainment. Movie is an electronic signal of moving graphics, pictures, or text used to combine a steady stream of image used for entertainment, education, or other uses. Now, I'm going to present Indonesian movie. The, the Indonesian film industry in the last 10 years has begun to rise with the arrival of new films, the few that gives a spark of hope for the development of Indonesian cinema as part of cultural expression nation. The genres also began to vary, from drama films, comedy, action, youth world, to horror movies. The last genre seems to be the most popular genre, both by producers as filmmakers as well as by the audience as film uh, connoisseurs. It took from the number of new horror film production in 2006 to mid 2007, which reached more than 20 movies. Cinema even today are still being invaded by the latest series of horror films that have been released in 2009 or are still in production. Well, do you know the journey of horror films in Indonesia? Apparently, horror films in Indonesia have a long history, where in its long history, horror films in Indonesia have experienced near that. Like other film genres in Indonesia, the Indonesian people really like mystical things, and this genre of film also gives them a sense of curiosity. Next.
And now for 1934, the long history of horror film in Indonesia began in 1943, where the first horror film was entitled Dua Siluman Ular Putih and Hitam, which was the work of the Tanjun. It is said that this film is so scary. And for the 1942, this year, Indonesia is still under Japanese occupation. This year, the film industry in Indonesia experienced disruption. All film industry, including horror genre films, experienced suspended that until Indonesia achieved independence. And for the 1974 horror film with the title Giving in the Grave certainly can never be forgotten from memory. The film played by the famous actress Susanna has become a must-watch film to horror genre films. This film is also the beginning of the revival of Indonesia horror films after suspended animation. And for 1970 until 1990, in recent years, horror film in Indonesia are often embellished with sensual scene, violence, and comedic element. In addition, this year also the ghosts of Kuntilanak, Sunda Bolong, and Pocong become horror movie icon. And for 1980, the New Order era influenced the stories in horror films in Indonesia, where the government requires that all films, including horror films, have a moral message and are represented by religious figure. For 1990, in this year, the start of the world of television, his appearance turned out to have an effect that influenced the world of cinema, where the Indonesian film industry was again in suspense animation as well as horror film. uh, for the 2001, the film with the ritual of wooden statue and the mantra "Come not, pick up, return not, deliver" is the first film to research Indonesia cinema in 21st century. Yes, Jelangkung is a film that has success in reviving horror films from suspended death. And for 2009 until 2017, the golden age of the film industry is in this year. There are 16 to 70 films that are in demand and are classified as very scary. For the 2012, The year 2012 was the apocalypse for horror films in Indonesia because sales only reached 1,057 tickets, 1,057 tickets sold from 19 horror films produced. And for 2017, Dhani I Can See Ghosts, this film was asked to be the best-selling Indonesian horror film in history, reaching 2.73 million viewers.
Indonesian horror films are the latest trend that displays interesting stories with a fresh touch of suspense and spooky. The following are some Indonesian horror film titles that are included in the ranks of the highest grossing horror films of all time. The first one, we have KKN di Desa Penari. This horror film, which just premiered at the end of last April, has managed to become the highest grossing horror film of all time. Wikipedia notes this Indonesian horror film has managed to collect as many as 5 million viewers to date. Believed to be a true story, this film is based on a popular horror thread on Twitter. Next, Pengabdi Setan. The position of Pengabdi Setan, which was previously listed at the best-selling horror films of all time, must be willing to be shifted by the new films KKN di Desa Penari. Pengabdi Setan is a horror film that ranks second and has generated more than 4.2 million viewers. The second sequel of this film will soon be released, also in 2022, to be precise in August. Next, we have Susanna, Bernapas Dalam Kubur, succeeding in getting more than 3.3 million viewers. The legendary film Susanna, which was remade in 2018, is ranked third in the ranks of the highest grossing Indonesian horror films of all time. This film is one of the iconic films that succeed in conjuring actress Luna Maya to be similar to the late Susanna, who became a legendary Indonesian horror film actress. Next. Next, we have Danur I Can See Ghost, the next film that managed to occupy the fourth position of Indonesia's best-selling horror film was the film Danur, which was produced in 2017. This Indonesian horror film managed to get more than 2.7 million viewers when it was broadcast. This film is based on a popular horror-themed novel by Risa Saraswati. This film is also a film that tells the real life of the author who can see ghosts and has ghost friends. And last but not least, we have Danur 2 Madah. Furthermore, the sequel to the horror film Danur managed to pocket more than 2.5 million viewers when it was broadcast. This film was released in 2018 and continues the story of the previous film, where it tells the story of Risa, who can see ghosts and has a ghost friend. This time, they have to deal with a mysterious female ghost at her aunt's house.
And for American movie, Hollywood is an area that is located in Los Angeles, California, USA. Here is the term Hollywood is a metaphor for the entertainment industry, media, or American entertainment operating in Southern California, which has been a revenue generating area country. In 1908, Thomas Alva Edison founded Motion Picture Patent Company, MPPC. Under the shade MPPC, Thomas Alva Edison became the only provider basic material and patent holder for all tools needed for later use for filmmaking. Around the 1910s, film companies non-MPPC members began moving to California. Some parties considered that the relocation of the film industry entrepreneur chose to move because avoid the pressure exerted by the MPPC. However, there are several companies that used to be joined in MPPC also choose to move. The film industry entrepreneur choose Hollywood. This city is small in California because Hollywood has a climate it's good. The weather there supports filming, to support by good geography to serve as shooting location for movies. Films produced in the 1910s were Hollywood with classic style, with the intention to be the best in everything. America has succeeded in breaking into the world film industry by producing quality and popular film in the era. For example, in the 1920s until the years 1930s, USA produced approximately 800 films per year, and this certainly makes the US with movies his Hollywood is known globally. Entertainment industry in Hollywood is growing with the advent of technology. Color film in the 1950s, making Hollywood films previously what only black and white was abandoned. In particular, action films, which are the main topic of this presentation, have been around since the 1930s with gangster or cowboy themes. At that time, the main icon of action film was not very visible because actors were more required to be able to play anything, including drama, comedy, and musical film. The 1940s saw a boom in Hollywood film. Many American actors and actresses have become legendary throughout this decade, such as Humphrey Bogart, Katharine Hepburn, Greta Garbo, and especially Clark Gable with his Oscar-winning film Gone with the Wind. And for 1950s, cinema began to compete with television. CinemaScope technology emerged, which is a widescreen film format that allows people to return to their interest in watching movies in theater. It was also in this decade that films from Asia emerged that were also considered at the world level. Japanese director Akira Kurosawa is very captivating world filmmaker. His film Seven Samurai, great 1940, 1954, greatly influenced world cinema, including Hollywood. Some of his films, Red River, Fort Apache, Rio Grande, The Alamo, and True Grit. And for 1960s, action film became more varied with the arrival of the first James Bond film, Doctor No. 1962, and the Cowboy Dollar trilogy starring Clint Eastwood, A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Clint Eastwood also shined even more by starring in many subsequent action films, such as Dirty Harry, Magnum Force, The Enforcer, The Outlaw, Jose Walsh, and Escape from Alcatraz, based on the true story.
Next, 1970s, Star Wars films became the starting point for the use of more complicated special effects in action films. Some of the iconic action film actors of the 70s, besides Clint Eastwood, were Steve McQueen, Charles Bronson, and James Coburn. Charles Bronson's name still shines in the 80s, especially through the Dead Wish film, which was made up to five sequels. James Coburn still had time to play in the film Eraser 1996 with Arnold Schwarzenegger. James died in 2002 of heart disease. Then in 1980s, the use of special effects in action films was increasingly felt. However, that does not mean that action film actors have lost important roles. Jackie Chan, a martial arts actor from Hong Kong, has made a name for himself in this decade. He managed to get out of Bruce Lee's shadow by uh, concocting an action comedy film with action scenes without a stunt double. In the 1980s, it seems that many action actors from various countries began to appear. Generally, if they are not good at martial arts, they have an athletic or muscular body. Harrison Ford is perhaps the exception. Next, 1990s to 2000s. Action films are still being produced and even with increasingly sophisticated special effects. Several new action actors have also emerged. For example, Dwayne Johnson, a former American wrestling athlete, Jason Statham, Mark Wahlberg, Vin Diesel, famous for the Fast and the Furious film, and Donnie Yen from Hong Kong, who is famous for the IP Man 1, 2, 3, 4 film. Even some Indonesian action actors are also starting to be known to the world. You know, if not Iko Uwais and Jut Haslim, who became famous through the film The Raid.
Okay, the next for Britain movie, British cinema has been a mixed affair. Korda and Hitchcock shone in the 1930s. David Lean oversaw a golden age and new wave director later established social realism as a fine perennial genre. However, elsewhere, British cinema has relied on individual games films that are held as epochal but later revealed as isolated treasure. From Dog Star to Hitchcock early cinema, everyone remembers the Lumiere brothers and their flickering projection of a train. But did the Englishman William Friese Greene beat them to the first moving image? If he did, unfortunately, he was the only person who saw it. His Bio-Phantascope machine, patented in 1889, 6 years before the Lumiere's first film, took 4 or 5 photos per second, captured on film rolling behind his shutter. Alas, there's no concrete record to suggest that he could successfully project the result, and the genuine invention of cinematography probably happened elsewhere. Whatever its origin, when film got going Britain was mesmerized. Audiences in the early 20th century were rapt by the work of foreign film companies, particularly the French Path and Gaumont studios that were churning out newsreels and silent movies. And for Britain's first big filmmakers, Britain began building its own studios in the Edwardian era, uh, led by an influx of American technicians and actors. Will Barker and Cecil Hepworth were the first major homegrown figures. From his Ealing studio, Barker made silent historical epic, and they were epic. Jane Shore, 1960s, 16 used 1,000 extra. By contrast, Hepworth films were modest. One of his earliest filmic projects recorded Queen Victoria's funeral in 1901, but he really made his mark with Rescue by Rover 19 and 5. It cost £7 sterling or 13 or 6 to make. The cheapest British film ever according to the Guinness Book of Records. Involved various members of Hepworth's family and featured a child being rescued by the star, Rover a collie. Britain's early film industry struggled through the 1920s, stifled by the economic and creative dominance of Hollywood. In 1927, Parliament passed the Cinematograph Film Act demanding that cinemas show a set quota of British film. Initially, it was 7.5% of output, raised to 20% by the mid-1930s. However, instead of fostering an industry of self-sufficient Hollywood-style studio, the act created a glut of quota quickies, uninspiring film produced to make up the numbers against the odds. Two highly celebrated directors emerged in the 1930s: Alfred Hitchcock and Alexander Korda. And the four early British films you should watch: The Lodge, A Story of the London, FOG 1926, Alfred Hitchcock. If you're going to watch a silent British film, watch this one, Young Hitchcock's serial killer story, starring Ivor Novello. And second, The Private Life of Henry 1933, Alexander Korda. Korda's brilliant deception of the big bearded one is among the most commercially successful British films ever made. And and next, Nell Gwynn, 1934, Albert Wilcox. Leading pre-war actress Anna Neagle starred as the Cockney girl with the ear and other bits of the king. And next, the 1999 Stabs 1935, Alfred Hitchcock. The best of Hitchcock pre-Hollywood films starred Robert Donat, caught up with a dangerous Blonde.
So next is big films and bigger audiences to golden age. British cinema took an unexpected turn during the Second World War that improved significantly. The make-do mantra of the warrior's dispatch 1930s extravagance, but while manpower and facilities were reduced, quality climbed as a more realist style of filmmaking developed. It, organ- it originated in documentary and more developed in the 1930s by John Grierson, famous for his work A Night Mail, 1936, in which a giant score by Benjamin Britten and W. H. Audens monotone first and lived the journey of a Royal Mail train from London to Scotland. When documentary passed for realism onto film, the wartime current inevitable created gentle propaganda. Next is the film's wartime maturation initiated a golden age of British cinema that lasted into the 1950s. David Lynch was the shining directorial force. As Brave Encounter 1945, written by Noel Coward and starring Trevor Howard, another Lynch award. Great Expectations 1946, starring John Mills, is arguably the best film adaptation of Dickens' death. Carol Reed challenged Lynch's supremacy with The Third Man 1949, a slice of British noir from the pen of Graham Greene. Granted that saw Orson Welles skulking around war-torn Vienna. Next. So here is the four golden age films you need to watch. The first one is Henry V. in 1944, Laurence Olivier. Again, Kurt and all that Oliver starred, produced and directed in a timely camouflaged by stirring slice of wartime propaganda. Next is A Brave Encounter, 1945, David Lynch. Golly gosh, they're both married but can't keep their hands off each other. Fatal Attraction consumed Celia Johnson and Trevor Howard. Next, we have Great Expectation in 1946, David Lynch. A young John Mills plays Pip in Lynch's magnificently murky mix of gothic mansions and graveyards. Then A Matter of Life and Death, 1946, Powell and Pressburger. Arrived piloted by Lynch and Pressburger in a German modern British cinema. British film has lurched from peak to throughout throughout the last 4 decades, while cinema is in reasonable health and present. Overall, the bad times seem to outstretch the good. There's no shortage of British talent. In front of the camera, Ewan McGregor, Keira Knightley, and co are global stars, while behind it, directors like Paul Greengrass and Ridley Scott have flown the flag in Hollywood. But funding, or the lack of it, is a consistent bugbear, exacerbated by the marketing and distribution shortfalls that can prevent good films from actually reaching an audience. Best of British Contemporary Cinema. Today, British film is enjoying one of its periodic booms, thanks in part of increased funding, not least from the National Lottery, and generous tax breaks and production costs. Many ostensibly British productions, the Harry Potter series among them, are actually joint efforts, incorporating foreign cash by using British talent in front of and behind the camera. The current variety of work is impressive, and the realities are rom-coms, costume dramas, and geezer gangster flicks seems to have passed. So now we're going to present the conclusion of our presentation. Maybe if I saw the first thing that you want to tell the conclusion first.
Yes. Well, wait a second. And for conclusion from us, the American film is a benchmark from various aspects. They are known as the satisfier of the masses apart from a few conscientious consumers, and they are as if a representative product enough with them and no need for anything else. Most of them are good adaptation, exciting action or match show, stunning science fiction, contain memorable message, are easy to digest and predict, so that they are friendly to the majority of potential viewers. Empower the latest technology, use the service of idols, influence and maximize marketing. They are welcome here because they are supported by various business companies, mainly US affiliated. Media coverage, intense advertising, their predictors, past edition or previous film in the series, and their repeat television viewings. Four factors that hinder their relationship with Indonesian audience. Among other are the attitude of some people who are not completely or forever oriented toward the US and everything related to it, including film, the careful selection of show by some people. It's not really appropriate, it will not be watched. Even a bad view, some people against them. American films excel in genre that are common to all nations, especially in the action or science fiction genre. Some like Marvel, Warner Bros, and etc., such as Fast and Furious or a series film or film produced by Marvel, Warner Bros, and etc., and quality camera and studio effect experience in making script, also a qualified advertising division, and especially for the box office class films. And for American indie films, some are very cultural and are not suitable and or unaccepted by some other nation. So in our opinion, American film can be more read the market, excel at the effect or technology, excel at experience, excel at capital, and excel at marketing. And how about you, Firza? What is your conclusion?
Okay, time is me, time is mine. So I think that for the UK itself can be said as the center of the country of almost all countries. England, which has stood for centuries and is characterized as a country with a royal form. England is famous for its very expansive, current expansive lifestyle, but it is visited by many tourists, a country with a lot of history in it. However, British films are not as popular as Hollywood films. In England, they are more inclined towards musicians such as the Beatles, Oasis, Adele, and many more. The UK film industry contributed more than 4.6 sterling billions to the country's gross domestic product in 2011, according to an independent report. The report said British films that hit the box office hit records last year with 410 pound sterling millions in revenue, including Harry Potter and the Deadly Hallows Part 2, Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, and independent films such as The King's Speech and the in-betweeners. So, in our opinion, England is more focused on the world of music and various other aspects, and film in Indonesia is the horror genre. Simply put, horror is one of the Indonesian people's favorite genres due to the first one is Indonesian culture is still attached to mystical things. Many Indonesian people still believe in mystical things. At least they have experienced horror events, and various horror events experiences by many people are often used as topics of conversation when gathering with friends or family. And I think that wide audience reach apart from vigorous promotion, one of the determining factors for the success of a film is the content in it. In the realm of horror films, the mystical theme he carries is relatable to many people. Moreover, not everyone has the opportunity to meet spirits. So when mystical content is brought to the big screen, of course, people's enthusiasm will increase. Those who have never experienced horror events get a golden opportunity to get to see popular ghost life. So, for all this presentation, we can conclude that Indonesian film is more the most popular is about horror movie, and then the American film is about action. So maybe Faisal, you can tell about the British film, which one the most popular. You can turn off
Uh,
your microphone.
for me, I only know Harry Potter. They are the biggest film and British making. So yeah, that's it. That's it that I know from film from British.
Okay, so that's about our presentation today. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, everyone.